Hey everybody, Aryn Savard coming at you with my first live post from the Soul Goal Sisterhood, which I'm like super pumped about. And what I love is that my mission for having this happen is already happening. Wanting women to be able to have a place where they can support each other and learn from each other. In the very first night that it was there, somebody posted asking for help on something, and somebody responded right away and told them what they did and what worked for them. And funny enough, it just rolled right into what I wanted to talk about today. You know, the universe has a funny way of kind of delivering topics to me. And one of them was this concept of self-acceptance, which is what the very first post on the Soul Gold Sisterhood was. And it also, I was faced with it last night with my own kiddo, dealing with all of that as well. So I think it's very timely that we talk about this, and that it's kind of the inaugural post for the Soul Gold Sisterhood. Jenny Ray, you're the first one on here. Can you tell me, can you hear me okay? Do I sound like I'm in a tunnel, or am I good? Give me a thumbs up if I'm good. Oh, here's my dog Tonka. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. If you guys are having a hard time hearing me, then somebody please type that. All good? Okay, awesome, thanks Lisa. I don't have my headphones in and connected, so I just want to make sure you guys are hearing me, okay? I wanted to dig into this concept of self-acceptance, self-love, learning to love our bodies, all that sort of stuff, because something never really sat quite right with me. And actually, I'm going to backtrack. I'm going to introduce myself, because with this being the first video in this new group, there may be some people who don't know me. So my name is Aryn Savard. I own a pole fitness studio and have for the last 10 or 11 years. And so this concept of self-love that we're going to be talking about is something that we teach in here. And also just a layout right from the get-go that I use colorful language, and I'm also not an expert. So I'm going to just lay that out there right away. So if you're offended by the occasional cuss word, this probably isn't a good place for you. And please know that what I say is just what I have experienced. It's what I've observed. And I am no way in shape, form, a counselor or anything like that. This is just ideas that I want to share and talk about. So coming back to this concept of self-acceptance, self-love. So something that's never quite sat well with me is the idea that we should love our bodies. And we hear this all the time. We should love our bodies. We should love them in all shapes and sizes. We should love it all the time, no matter what's happening. We should learn to love. And what never really sat right with me is it's very difficult for me to force myself into loving my body. And I couldn't figure out why that was until I really sat with this concept a little bit as I was preparing to do this video for you guys, and you'll be really proud of me. I actually have notes. Those of you guys who did my last video, I totally forgot what my second point was, and thank you to Alana because she pulled me back in. But I have notes. Okay, so here's the deal. Our bodies are constantly changing. They change from day to day, and particularly even for women, it can change from hour to hour, and it can change from day to day and week to week and month to month. And being told that I should love my body no matter what, I don't think is a very realistic expectation. And I also don't think it's where we're supposed to be spending our time and energy. So let me explain kind of this process. I really think that the reality of loving ourselves in all ways, shapes, and form is really fucking hard. And I feel like people trivialize it, and people by meeting like media and print and you know, people that kind of rah this stuff, I feel like it's a bit trivialized. Like it's just something you can turn a switch and have happen. And kind of the first thing I want to talk about is that learning to accept ourselves and create self-love in our lives is a faith-based process. So I'm going to tell you a story about when I decided that I needed to learn how to do a back handspring. I don't remember how old I was, maybe 36 or 37. And I decided I needed to learn a back handspring. So I hired a coach, and we started working in the foundations, fundamentals, and I had to, every step of the way, build faith in the fact that I was not going to die. And so what this kind of looked like was, I did it the first time. And my first evaluation was, oh, thank God I didn't die. Okay, cool. So I know now that I can do it and not die. So that's like the first step of faith for me. Then you do it again, and then you get feedback. And you're like, okay, so now I didn't die. So now I'm going to evaluate what happened. Okay, cool. So then you do it again, and you get better at it. And then you're like, okay, cool. I now have faith that when I do this thing, when I start the foundations and do the steps for my back handspring, that not only am I not going to die, but I'm also getting better at it. Okay, awesome. And then what happens is you get better and better and better at it. And then you do one and you fall flat on your face. So I did a back handspring beautifully by myself, no assistance, not on a trampoline. Was so happy about it. I had so much faith in the process of doing this. The very next time I did the back handspring, I landed flat on my face. Flat on my face. And so all of a sudden my faith was faltered. And I was like, oh, I actually might die. I might die doing this. And so then I had to go back and I had to rebuild that process with the exact same steps. I do it again. I didn't die. I do it again, looking for feedback. Do it again. I'm getting better at it. Awesome. And so what happens is you finally, over time, build this faith in the process of what you're working on. And as you look back over it, you realize that you're better now than you were when you started. You're better at whatever it is. So you begin to have faith in the process of what's happening, not faith in the outcome, right? I may have never successfully completed a back handspring, but I kept getting a little bit better and a little bit better, and I kept not dying. And all of a sudden you realize, okay, well, I am pretty much capable on most days. So now all of a sudden you have faith in this process. And to me, that's what self-acceptance is all about. It's learning to have faith in the process of loving and accepting yourself. There will be days where it gets easier. There'll be days where you're feeling better at it. There'll be days where you ride high because it's successful. And then all of a sudden there'll be a day where you fall flat on your face. And you're like, how did I get here from where I was? I was doing so well, and now I have zero faith in myself. I don't like myself right now. And so then we have to start that process all over again. We have to build the faith again that we will get back or get better to a place that we are desiring to go. So if we start to understand that our faith is in the process of learning to love and accept ourselves, not in the end result of actually being complete in love and acceptance of ourselves, it gives us a whole bunch of room for freedom to experiment, to fail, to fall, to succeed. It gives room for all of those things. And then we start to shift out of that shame and guilt situation where we feel like we should be doing better at this. I should love myself. And then you feel shameful because you don't, or you feel guilty because you don't, or you feel guilty because you ate a cookie. And then it becomes this deprecating cycle that is this downward spiral. So starting to understand that it's a process and you do need to build faith in it, and it is hard work, you guys. It is constant work because we are bombarded by a society that doesn't support us being self-led and self-actualized individuals. Our society is always giving us things that telling us we're not good enough and that we need to buy this to get better and that we need this kind of support in order to be better at being human beings. So kind of moving on to the next piece is I feel like we're way too focused on the outside. We're way too focused on what the body looks like. Too focused on what the skin looks like, on what the muscles look like, on what size clothing we wear, on how our bodies jiggle, on how our bodies don't jiggle, on how my face looks in a selfie, on how I present myself when I go outside. Everything is so focused on the outsides of ourselves. And I think we need to start understanding that our worth and our value, the things that we should be accepting and loving, it's not in the vehicle. Our bodies are the vehicle, right? It's what move us around. It's what get us from A to B, what allows us to do physical things. But that's not where our worth lies. Our worth lies on the inside. It's not the outside vehicle. So, but our society is used to praising the vehicle, right? Our society praises and oohs and ahs over the Audis and the Lamborghinis and the Porsches. Our society doesn't ooh and ah over the Nissan Versa, right? So we're already in this system that is built for us to fail at accepting ourselves and loving ourselves. So if we start to shift our game plan from falling in love with the outside and in turn investing on the inside where our worth actually lies, then all of a sudden this process becomes so incredibly different. So if you guys remember the Alice in Wonderland, the live version, the Johnny Depp version, at one point in time, he kind of pokes his finger in Alice's chest and he's like, "You've lost your muchness." And so that's kind of the concept I want to bring in here is we need to get focused on our muchness. We need to get focused on the insides and what makes us come to life and where our worth and our value is, how we interact with the world, not just how we look in the world, right? So if we can focus on the muchness on the inside instead of the vehicle on the outside, all of a sudden this whole thing begins to change. The other part of this is that I feel like we also need to remember that we're part of something bigger, that our physicality, our outside parts are so small in the grand scheme of how we connect and fit into this world. And you know what is amazing at reminding us of this? Nature. If you guys don't regularly do nature, you need to do that. Because seriously, girls, do you care when you're out in nature? Sorry, phone call. Do you care what the squirrels think about what you're looking and what you're wearing like? They don't care if your butt jiggles as you're walking down the walkway. They don't care if you've got like tree parts in your hair and you have no makeup on. Squirrels, bears, trees, none of it cares what you look like. So all of a sudden, we remove that external pressure and we're like, yeah, like if you're on a hike, typically you don't really give two rips about what it is you look like. But instead, you start connecting with, what does my body feel like? Like I feel the power in my legs as I'm walking up this hill. All of a sudden you're like, look at all of these colors and look at all of these amazing things out here. Look at all of how the moss grows on the trees the right way. Look at how the water just effortlessly flows through the rocks. So if you are not a regular nature goer, I really highly encourage you get out into nature and you start to remember how you fit into this larger picture of life. And it's not about the magazines and the products and all of that stuff. We need less mirrors, we need less magazines, we need less products and more nature. So do that. I think that is hugely, hugely important. So along those lines is now shifting our perspective from what's external and what's internal. And I just did this with my kiddo last night. He was really, really struggling with what people were saying about him. They were, saying rude things, mean things to him, making up things. And so we talked about this concept of this external perspective of, sorry, I just got a message from my husband. Okay, so this concept of this external validation or consuming this external viewpoint of what our value is versus what our internal viewpoint is. So paint a picture for you, I just use this with a client. So like in the battle movies where they have like robotic sort of soldiers and equipment, and when they're going out to do battle, all of a sudden this like shield comes over their face and it gives us like digital readings on the inside. This is what I want you to start doing with your life. So when you go out there, I want you to put on this visor of self-love, of self-value. And I want you to start to identify, as if they're like little red targets, those people that you are internalizing their perspective of your value. And it can come from something so simple. It can come from something as simple as somebody saying, "Oh, I like your outfit." And all of a sudden you internalize that. You're like, "Oh, this is a good outfit. Okay, so I look good in this outfit, so I'm gonna wear it again." You don't take into account when you do that how you actually feel in that outfit, how that color makes you feel, how the cut makes you feel, how the fabric makes you feel. All of a sudden you're using external input to generate your concept of self-value. And it could be something as big as somebody saying something negative or nasty to you, and all of a sudden you internalize that as your truth, or you start to see whatever it is they commented on as something that is not valuable for you, or something that you can't love. And the challenge with that is we are giving away our power to those people, and this is where the leaking gold comes in. If you had a brick of gold, maybe it was even liquid. Let's say we made it liquid and we melted it into a bowl. And all of a sudden you start pouring out this gold into certain places that you choose. Would you give this liquid gold to somebody who has no value for you? To somebody who doesn't know you, somebody who's going to tear you apart and make you feel horrible inside? Would you pour liquid into their pot? Probably not, right? You're not going to invest in them. So that's what I want you to start to think about. So when you're evaluating these external stimulus, when you're not feeling good about yourself, maybe you have like an internal dialogue going in your head about your unworthiness or unlikability or unlovability, I want you to pause for a minute and actually see if you can figure out where it's coming from. Ask yourself, is this external? Is this internal? And external could be 14 years down the road, like in the past. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, now I remember where this came from. And so those things that are external, I want you guys to start thinking about it as like this block, this building block of your foundation of self-worth. And I want you to start taking those blocks away. And what happens is when we start moving our foundation, when we start shifting our foundation, it gets scary, right? Whether we're worried about how somebody's going to think or feel about what we're saying, or whether we're worried about, oh my gosh, if I take this away, this has been with me for so long, now what? And what happens though is you create space for all of that to fall away, and you create space for a new foundation to be built. You can't build a brand new foundation on a foundation that's rotten and gross and yucky and awful. You have to get rid of that one, and then you have to build a new one. And so if you can start to identify which things are externally stimulated, maybe it's a magazine, maybe it's a brand that you identified with for a long time that actually carried a very negative message for you. You need to start pulling those things out of your foundation. You start getting rid of them. Don't pour gold into those things. If you pour gold over this building block that's rotten and awful, it's going to decay inside. And as soon as you build your foundation, your house of self-love on top of it, the gold's just going to crush because it's just a shell. So don't give that away. Don't leak that gold in places where it's not going to come back as a return investment for you. Recognize what's on the outside. And ladies, 99% of what we learn to believe about ourselves comes from the outside. It doesn't actually come from the inside. We may internalize it, it may feel like it's from the inside because it's our own voice saying it, but it's come from the outside and we've chosen to take it in. So when we start to recognize, when we start to put on that visor and we start to pick out with those little red targets, those things that are external, now we have a choice. Now we're like, I recognize you. I can choose now to take that in, or I can choose to give it right back. And so we now start reclaiming our power in this point. We stop leaking our gold. We start retaining it. Some of those things, guys, are internal. So, and I find for me, this is a lot with where I was versus where I am. So that's an internal thing for me, going, okay, I used to be here and now I'm here and now I'm uncomfortable and it's very hard to love this aspect of me, whatever it is. So that's something that I need to work on. And that's where I start to change my perspective. And guys, when I dig into my muchness, when I dig in and focus on developing the parts of me that help me connect with the world, that help me be an amazing communicator, that help me be in nature and do amazing things, that help me create concepts and be creative, when I focus on those things, they are the most empowering things for me. And all of a sudden, I forget about what my body looks like on the outside. So I encourage you guys, when you're doing that internal work, focus on what's on the inside. Focus on what fills you with life. Focus on what makes you excited, what makes you passionate, the things that you're just like jumping out of your skin to either experience or be involved with or do. And let the external input begin to fade away or almost take a back seat. And then what happens is when that's not our focus, it becomes much easier to accept what's happening because we've placed our value in things that are actually in our soul gold. not on the outside vehicle. And I'm not going to say that all of a sudden that magicalness is going to turn into, oh my God, I love every part of my body and my butt is amazing now. That's not what I'm saying. I think we will always struggle with certain things. And like I said, this is a faith building process. So you really need to dig into the fact that it's a process. There's going to be times where you're successful at it and it feels amazing and that you feel like you're moving in the right direction. And there's going to be times, girls, where you fall flat on your fucking face. And you need to pick yourself up and you need to do it all over again. But guys, when you focus on the muchness, when you focus on the things that make you much, all of a sudden it becomes easier to accept all of it as a whole versus looking at what's on the outside and then what's on the inside, and it's all separate entities. They all have to be built together. So I want you to think about shifting your focus to the gold, not the container carrying it. It's lots of fun to like dress up the container, make it fancy, take care of it properly, right? Whether you condition it or keep it clean or whatever the case may be. So it's fun to do those things, and it is important to do those things because if they make you feel good, then it's a good thing. But don't make the container your sole investment. Make the soul gold your sole investment. So that's my little trick for you guys. I'm going to ask you guys that you take one course of action today or through this week. I want you to start changing your perspective, external versus internal, discovering which is which. And I want you to start digging into the muchness, to the soul gold on the inside. And I want you to make some comments and see what happens. It can be one thing, guys. It can be one single thing, your muchness. It can be one thing. Just write it down. Just don't make it your boobs or your butt or your arms. Don't make it the physical thing. Make it the muchness on the inside. Post it in here or post it in the group. And girls, I encourage you guys to celebrate each other. So it's easy to fall into this trap of jealousy too, right? So jealousy is the manifestation in physical form in front of us of what we feel like we want or a concept that we feel we want. So as ladies are doing this, I want you to remove yourself from it, and I want you to look at what they're celebrating, and I want you to get excited about celebrating it with them. Because when you amplify somebody else's muchness, it's going to come back to you a millionfold. So I hope that helps you guys. Please feel free to share this with anybody that you want to share. Please invite people in and let's talk about this. Let's have this conversation about what happens and what rolls out. And I would love to hear from you guys what it is that maybe triggered something or a thought process that was helpful. And that's it, guys. I wish you a really, really amazing Friday, and I give you all kinds of love and support, and wish you amazing things in the week to come. Okay, bye guys. Mwah.